Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the Sikh Channel Legal Show with myself, Mr. Bal, and my regular guest, Solicitor Kulwinder Kaur, Employment Law Specialist. Kulwinder, welcome to the Legal Show.
Thank you, Davinder. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And today we want to speak about working from home because since the pandemic, as you know, the world has changed. I'm just looking out across from the SIKH CHANNEL studio at the offices across the road, and there used to be hundreds and hundreds of people there at the offices, but now it's just a few dozen people. And I think this is a story with all offices across the country. People want to work from home. Since the pandemic, have discovered the benefits of hybrid working from home. And yourself, Kulwinder, are you working from home as a solicitor?
Yes, I am. I'm field-based, so I work remotely and I attend hearings, whether that's in person or via remote access.
And how's that been for you in terms of your lifestyle? Is it better for you working from home?
Yes, I mean, I really enjoy working from home, but it's it's nice to have that flexibility where you can, have that short break, coffee break, but I do miss the interaction with colleagues, and also sometimes you forget to take a break, which is not always good. But being able to do things such as the school run, I find is really useful for me.
Yes, and we're not going back to the office. It's been quite widespread in the press that people do not want to go back to offices. I know the government had a battle with civil servants trying to get them back to the office, but they resisted, and people want to work from home all the time. And it is better for people's lifestyle. There's less traveling, as you said. It's more flexible for parents. But even people who don't have children want to work from home. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic, if it taught us anything, is to really reflect inwards and make sure that, we're enjoying life, because it's not all about working. There needs to be that balance, and people really started looking at their commute, the type of role they're doing, how they're doing the work, and so the flexibility now has become part of a norm, and it's not necessarily just restricted to, you know families or parents. It's a right that's open to everyone, all employees.
I wanted to touch upon that. And the first question that people may have is who can work from home? Can anybody in any job ask their employer to work from home?
Yes, absolutely. All employees have the right to make a request for flexible working, whether that's, having compressed hours, whether that's working part-time. There's an endless list of, and it's really geared towards what's suitable for that particular employee in terms of their request that they would like to make.
Right? Because not all jobs can be done from the home. I mean, to give a very obvious example, a surgeon working in a hospital will need to go in to the hospital to perform surgery. There's lots of other jobs, construction and so on, which can only be done on site. So it is mostly office-based office workers that we are speaking about today who can work from home. And so if somebody's based in an office job, can they demand to work from home? Is it their right?
It is their right in the sense that they can make the request. However, it is they're only eligible to do so if they've been employed by the same employer for a period of 26 weeks. And then it's obviously for the employer to consider that request and either accept the request or reject the request. So there is a process to be followed.
What sort of grounds can the employer reject home working upon?
The only real grounds that the employer has, after really weighing up the advantages and disadvantages, is due to the business needs. So it must work for the business needs, and if the business is going to reject that, they need to set out why that's the case.
And what sort of reasons are typical reasons given by employers for rejecting home working?
It could be a number of reasons which is going to impact the business as a whole. Maybe they're short staffed, or they have an influx of work and the team is already quite stretched. So there could be a number of reasons, or they feel that the role is not one that could be fully done from home. So it would vary from case to case.
It's very subjective.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if somebody is refused the right or the ability to work from home, what can they do? Can they appeal, for example?
Yes. So if the employee's request is rejected, the employer does need to set out the reasons why, and also they must allow an appeal process. So usually the employee has 14 days in which to respond to the rejection and make their appeal.
And does an employee need to get legal advice, or is this something they can do themselves?
Yes, it's something that they can quite easily do themselves. It's quite a straightforward process in terms of setting out your requirements. But a little tip would be to just look at the overall picture and have a look at potential issues that your employer might come up with, which you've already addressed in your request, so that you're looking at it as a whole, and that way it's less likely to be rejected. So, you know, make sure that's clear in your request that you have considered the employer's point of view and potential obstacles.
And in that, is there discrimination possible? For example, if it's a mother or a father, a parent who has parenting needs and they want to work from home with good reason, can they argue discrimination?
Well, as a whole, the employer would need to deal with the request on a reasonable basis and actually set out their reasons quite clearly for why it's been rejected. And if they don't handle that process particularly well, or the employee is treated unfairly thereafter, i.e., they don't have that promotion, or they're subjected to any detrimental treatment because of that request, then the employer could be facing a potential claim in the tribunal. So, yes, in effect.
And are you we're seeing a lot of challenges with home working, or have employers accepted it? This is a new norm, it's a way of life, and employers are being very helpful and facilitating home working. What's your experience?
I think on the whole, employees have either changed roles where their request maybe hasn't been met, and other employers have adapted very well with a hybrid model, or they've allowed the request to go in if their business model allows that. So on the whole, I think things have settled down now, and there is a lot of positivity to report.
Because home working is a part of life. I can't think of anybody that I know who's working, who's not working from home. It seems everybody's working from home. Those that can, still in office jobs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It has been become, normal, as it should have been from the outset, really, because it's I find it really helps in terms of efficiency, and there must be that employer employee trust as well. We're all adults, we should be left to have that autonomy where we can get on with our work, we can be trusted to do the work. And I think on the whole, employers are quite reasonable. As long as the work is getting done, most employers won't take issue with any requests. And sometimes the employees, you will get the odd employee who's not doing the work. So it's a balancing exercise, but I think on the whole, things seem to have settled down and it's working.
That's tremendous. And working from home has its own challenges because it's hard to have a dividing line, and people end up working very, very long hours, and there's no division between work and home. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I, for one, have been quite guilty of that, particularly when I was working in another role during the lockdown. It was quite difficult to balance home life, working from home, family life, and working from home. So you've got to have clear boundaries in terms of making sure that you are looking after your own well-being, taking that 5-10 minute break, making sure you're still taking your lunch hour. And if the work can be done, I mean, our profession, for example, we do have to work sometimes beyond our core hours. But other professions, if it's a job where you can switch off after doing your core hours, then you absolutely should, and have that distinction with home life and family life.
Of course, there's the other side of it as well. Some people may not work as hard as they would in an office, whereas you might have one set of the type of person who will work excessively, start working in the morning and carry on into the night, past dinner, and so on. You will have other people who will see it as an opportunity to do less and perhaps just do a few hours of work and go to the gym or go to the park for a walk.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. There's going to be employees who do take advantage, unfortunately, but I guess that happens in the office anyway. When people go and have their extended coffee breaks, they have their chats, and the efficiency is not there. So so it is a constant balancing exercise, and I think um, it does become apparent if work is not getting done. So there's only so far those employees can take that, but there is the extreme where people are suffering burnout, overwhelm, and it is impacting their mental health, which must be raised with the employer if it is becoming to a stage where you're feeling overwhelmed or burnout and you feel like you can't cope. You absolutely must speak out in those situations.
That's very good advice, and it's a real danger working from home because one is isolated and nobody can spot warning signs because you're working at home and you might be drowning under work or not able to cope with the complexity of the work. There's nobody to turn to easily and ask a question. And that isolation is a real problem for mental health and for stress.
Yes, it's been highlighted that working from home can be quite isolating, particularly, you're not having that human one-to-one contact, everything is remote. So it's really important to have a close-knit team, or even having a one-to-one with your superior or your manager, and just making sure that if you are suffering from any mental health issues, then you're reaching out and speaking to someone, even if it's family or other professionals such as your GP or counselors. But initially, if it does become a problem, then it absolutely must be highlighted with your employer. Otherwise, it will impact on your work, and that will then impact on your home life as well.
Thus, with anything, too much of anything is bad for you. Any extreme of any one situation is generally unhelpful. People may not want to be in the office 5 days a week. Equally, being at home 5 days a week is perhaps too much. And the other end of the spectrum. So, would you suggest hybrid working?
Yeah, hybrid working is quite a happy medium actually, because it gives you that balance where you're able to meet your colleagues or clients in person, as well as being able to work from home, not having to commute, and probably being more efficient working from home as well. So and so I think it's a nice happy medium, and it means that you have a change of scenery, which can really work wonders for your mental health as well. Being outdoors, taking that fresh air, taking that walk.
Conversely, can an employee insist upon going into an office? Some employers may want to save the cost of an office and close the office completely and enforce home working as a permanent full time role. Can staff ask to go into an office?
Again, it would really depend on the employer and the situation. If they are looking to become more efficient and close offices, then it's a case of potential redundancies. It may be that work of a particular kind has diminished, or they may not need so many staff. So it would need to have be looked at as a whole in terms of why why they're not able to go into the office. And it may be that the employee might need to look elsewhere for a new job if it's not quite the right fit for them. So there's a number of ways that could arise, um, and it really depends what the long term vision is for that employee. If they really want to stay with that employer, their role may change.
It's a fast moving and fast developing area, hybrid home working, because it's new. It's only arisen in the last 12 to 18 months since the pandemic. And I think we'll see more cases come to court and the law and case law will become clearer over time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, pre pre lockdown and the pandemic, it was quite a straightforward matter. You either worked in the office or you didn't. You could work remotely or you couldn't. And now we have this hybrid model whereby you have the option. Some people are able to work 1 or 2 days in the office. Some prefer to work more days in the office. So it's it swings and roundabouts. It has its plus and negatives for the employer and the employee.
That's tremendous. So we will keep a watching brief on the area of home working. It is fast developing, and perhaps you can keep our viewers updated as to their rights as they evolve. I'm sure there'll be some test cases in court later this year. Kulwinder, thank you very much for joining the SIKH Channel legal show. And briefly, before we go, can you recap your legal week? How's your week been the past 5 days or so in law? If you can tell us briefly about anything of note or any interesting elements to your work in the past week or so?
Oh wow, what a great question. Um, I've actually been in a free day trial, so that was very interesting, and it was a remote hearing. So with remote hearings comes new challenges. Whilst the client and the opponent does end up saving time, not having to commute to the tribunal, there can be some technical issues. So that's something to bear in mind. And also in terms of what you think a witness will say when they're up there in the stand is not always obvious. So what I would say is it was very interesting to see how one particular witness panned out. And in hindsight, perhaps that witness shouldn't have been there. So as a general observation that came out, that was very interesting.
As a lawyer, I can certainly sympathise, and I know of many occasions when witnesses don't always say what they've said in their statement, they either go beyond their statement or they change their story. And it happens very often, it's a very common story. It happens to lawyers all the time. And I'm sure many lawyers will resonate with that. Thank you very much for sharing your legal week and for joining us on the legal show at SIKH Channel. We look forward to seeing you next week and we'll discuss a new topic and learn more about your work. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Kulwinder Kaur, Employment Law Solicitor, for joining us on the SIKH Channel Legal Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ